culture.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that ties right into the epigenetics. What you've been
Correct.
talking about, how those types of incidences, our environment, our the racism, seeing a black man shot on repeat every single day, lasted across social media websites, that affects our our genetic makeup over time, and we have to start understanding, there's a time and a place to turn that off and detox from all that stuff, because in the end, yes, it does make you sick. Yes, it will cause, internal issues for you that are silent, but ultimately deadly. I mean, look at me. I was relatively healthy my whole life. My friends will tell you I was never a drinker. I was never a smoker. I was in the military. I got out the military. Matter of fact, after not playing football since high school, walked onto the football team, tried out, made the team, collapsed 2 weeks later from advanced kidney disease. You know, what I didn't talk about was the trauma, that I experienced, through that journey, leading up to that point. And I'm pretty sure, that what you're talking about has a lot to do with, the genetic makeup of myself and why I'm dealing with what I'm dealing right now. So this isn't about welcome, welcome, welcome everybody to another episode of Health and Wellness Mondays with myself, Dre James, and Alfred White. Appreciate you showing back up here with us for another episode of edification and learning. And this week we're just going to get right down to it. We're talking about Black health. We're talking about minority health, from apart from a white body culture perspective. We're looking at it from a lens that we can learn from, and we can take and pass down to our children, and have our children pass down to their children. Just really taking ownership of our own healthcare. So, with that being said, I want to introduce Alfred White. I'll let him get into a little bit more details about himself when he begins his session. But to let you guys know, we'll be studying today the epigenetics of being Black and feeling blue, understanding African American vulnerability to disease. The author of that said article is a Dr. Darren Smith. So, with that being said, the floor is yours, Mr. White.
Thank you. My name is Alfred White, and I'm a licensed mental health clinician and a substance use disorder professional, and I'm located in Federal Way. And if anybody wants to get in touch with us and need any services, go to our website, the League of Extraordinary People.org or TLOEP.org. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the epigenetics of being Black and feeling blue. And the reason why I'm utilizing this topic, you guys, is because in actuality, in 2018, I was diagnosed with liver cancer. And after I received my operations for the liver cancer, I asked my doctor what type of continuing care program did they have to help me with the aftercare of my liver cancer surgery. And they had none. And since I've worked in hospital institutions before, and I was the manager and developer of a continuum of care program, I just started doing the research. And the research was based off of my friend, Veronique Mead, who does chronic illness and trauma studies. And through her research and her fact sheets, that's the only reason why. And it was the only way I was able to get diagnosed with my fibromyalgia, my chronic fatigue syndrome, my IBS, and like I said before, my fibromyalgia. I couldn't go any place in Seattle and get the kind of health care that I needed until I started presenting this document, these fact sheets that I had, and started presenting them to the doctors that I was seeing. I went all the way through Seattle's Cancer Care Alliance, through the University of Washington, through Swedish Hospital, through Virginia Mason, and none of them had any of these stats. They didn't even care, because guess what, you guys? Science is in one room and medical and healthcare is in another room. And so what I did was I looked up Veronique, and she has all this information that we need to learn as a people so we can help build and create community. So tonight, the subject matter is understanding African American vulnerability to disease through epigenetics. And I think what I want to do first is actually give you the definition of epigenetics. What is epigenetics? Your genes play an important role in your health, but so do your behaviors and environment, such as what you eat, how physically active you are. Epigenetics is the study of how your behaviors and environments can cause changes that affect the way your genes work. I want you guys to really hear this. It says how it's a study of how your behaviors and environment that can cause changes that affect the way your genes work. Unlike genetic changes, epigenetic changes are reversible and do not change your DNA sequence, but they can change how your body reads a DNA sequence. So with that being said, gene expression refers to how often or when proteins are created from the instructions within your genes. While genetic changes can alter which protein is made, epigenetic changes affect gene expression to turn your genes on and off. Since your environment and behavior such as diet and exercise can result in epigenetic changes, it's easy to see the connection between your genes, your behaviors, and your environment. So as we start with this article, I want you guys to transpose yourself back to 1619, Jamestown, Virginia. Black Americans and other Americans of color have endured many hardships ever since 20 Africans set foot in Jamestown, Virginia in 1619. For 85% of our nation's existence, white imposed systems of oppression via slavery and Jim Crow, separate but equal, were the bloody and violent norm. Since that time, the persistence of racial discrimination has remained a routine part of their everyday experience. Black folk have worked very hard on a steady path of social mobility through group uplift and self-determination against overwhelming odds. In this milieu of racist deprivation, some Black Americans have managed to find economic, political, and other forms of success against the hegemonic, countervailing forces of white institutional racism and all of its permutations that thwart Black life as we know it. This systemic inequality has an impact on more than class option. It influences human biology and physiology at the cellular level, leaving the bodies of the poor, the impoverished, and the target more vulnerable to chronic disease. Epigenetics is the science of how the external environment affects us at the molecular level by alternating gene expression and function that can in turn be heritable. It refers to chemical modifications or tags that mark specific genes around the intricate DNA complex. These modifications can alter gene expression, influencing our biology and function. I really want you guys to hear this. It said it influences our biology and function. Think of a tag as a volume control knob that signals the gene to turn up or down its program function. Our genes listen for cues from the environment, such as the food we eat, the kind of milieu where we live and work, the circumstances of our birth, and the race and class-based interactions we share with one another. These factors, in part, determine how our genes respond in ways that expose more vulnerable populations to disease. Human wars, famines, droughts, plagues, physical and emotional abuse, and other forms of social deprivation not only leave their mark on society in harmful ways, but they also wreak havoc deep within the cells of our bodies. I want you to really hear this, you guys. Deep within the cells of our bodies. The cells react to stresses in the larger social structure at crucial developmental times in the womb that have influenced our human health later in adult life, leaving us more sensitive to our environment and susceptible to disease. A longitudinal Dutch famine birth cohort that began shortly after World War II in 1945 captured the complexity of environmental factors on our genes. The study analyzed the long-term physical and emotional effects in children who were exposed to maternal malnutrition in the fetal environment. They found that poor nutrition leads to epigenetic changes in gene regulation, meaning that they turn our genes on and off in our gene regulation of the fetus and its developing biological system. So before we even come out the womb, we've been transformed. It says, which disposes cells to certain disease or slow accumulation that include obesity, kidney disease, lung problems, cardiac disease, breast cancer, and a host of additional physical and mental health disorders.
Mr. White.
Yes, sir.
My apologies. For the sake of our fans and the people that are actually itching for this information right now, we're going to take a pause right now because what I'm getting information that we're in and out of signal. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull back for about 1 to 2 minutes. We're going to reset the stream, and then we'll be right back here on the same channel if anybody can hear me. Is that okay with you, Mr. White?
Yes.
Okay. One moment. So for the audience listening, we're going to try to pull back, reset the stream. We'll be right back. Give us about 1 to 2 minutes to get this signal squared away. Thank you.
Epidemiology and other closely related social science disciplines, it's been well established that a social class position is inversely linked to poor health. Further, it is well known that health status follows a social gradient with class-based differences in disease frequencies that mirror society. African Americans are constantly regulated to the margins of society where they are continuously exposed to the mundane effects of white-imposed discrimination. Within this space, many African Americans endure daily hassles and sustained assaults for just being Black. These microaggressions can have negative health-related consequences for their mental, emotional, and physical well-being by epigenetically altering the expression of certain cells that control for important body functions. Research over the last 4 decades, listen to this, last 4 decades, has mounted strong evidence that race-based mistreatment on the basis of physical characteristics, hair, bone, lips, skin color, eye shape, etc., takes a heavy toll on Black people, not only at the social and political and economic levels of society, but also at the physiological level where cortisol, the body's flight or fright hormone, is seen at elevated levels in African Americans. DNA and its sequencing is genetically programmed to perform functions of the body, such as this very stress response. However, biological processes that regulate these functions can be epigenetically altered to increase the physiological stress response in the body at a higher rate and longer than what is normal. This, in turn, can influence the normal function of a clustering of different cells that regulate blood pressure, kidney function, and cardiac function. Scientists can now investigate these epigenetic modifications on cells induced by the environment, such as the Dutch famine example. The science of epigenetics, you guys, is unlocking significant clues to how racial discrimination can induce changes to the expression of certain genes linked to biological development and the existence of disease. These epigenetic changes can linger for a lifetime and can potentially be transmitted to offspring. Because Black Americans and their forebears have endured over 20 generations of white-imposed race-related inequities in every major sector in society, including persistent race-based discrimination in housing, education, health care, jobs, and the prison industrial complex, they carry a higher burden of disease. Health and disease are no longer purely infectious in nature, but instead social and environmental factors account for most chronic disease. Let me say this sentence one more time. Health and disease are no longer purely infectious in nature. It is the function of, but instead social and environment factors account for most chronic disease. It is a function of the dynamic interaction between our genes and the larger society, and epigenetics is providing deeper understanding as to how our genes operate in these situations. African Americans and descendants have paid an exorbitantly high price for living in an unequal society, and a number of reprehensible ways through the practice of forced labor, high incarceration rates, frequent unemployment, and low educational expectation. And now significant healthcare challenges. Hear this now. It says, and now significant healthcare challenges are among the more salient forms white on black discrimination. In the absence of sweeping governmental reforms that place human rights over property rights, African Americans must take greater ownership in their own health care by becoming better informed on effective ways to reduce stress to the extent possible, given the maintenance of systems of domination and oppression to have an impact upon the quality of black life. Otherwise, these persistently elevated stress levels with chronic exposure to race-based discrimination have been shown to be physiological and mentally bad for health and well-being, both at the individual and institutional levels of society. The rest is epigenetic tags with harmful expressions. In closing with this article, and I want to let you guys know that this article was created in 2013, and that's how many years ago? That's 8 years ago. And you guys still haven't heard anything about what's going on in our communities when it comes down to black healthcare. Your thoughts on this?
Yes. Really what you're explaining as far as black health and what I'm hearing from you is a lot of it's been withheld from us, through white body culture, through
Exactly.
through tactics that are designed to keep us specifically in the health, mental health, and therapeutic situation that we're in. I just don't think that we're actually breaking down the science of it in this way. We're always telling people on surface value, hey, eat better, or don't eat pork, or don't eat this, or eat this way. I really appreciate the way that you're giving me the history behind why our health affects us the way we are within our communities, and how it affects our communities the way it does. So with that being said, I have a couple of questions I want to ask you, when it comes to this information, because the word culture, I think people understand it, but going through some of the context and the literature that you've given me, there's a quote here that states, "The longer you swim in a culture, the more invisible it becomes." So, in your own words, what is culture? What is that to you?
So culture refers to the knowledge, experience, beliefs, values, attitudes, meanings, hierarchies, religion, notions of time, roles, spatial relations, concepts of the universe, and material objects and possessions acquired by a group of people in the course of generations through individual and group striving. Culture is the knowledge shared by a group of people. Culture is communication. Communication is culture. A culture is a way of life of a group of people, the behaviors, beliefs, values, and symbols that they accept generally without thinking about them, and that are passed along by communication and imitation from one generation to the next. Culture is a collective programming of the mind that distinguishes the members of one group or category of people from another.
I'm glad you said that, because right now you're basically giving the meat and the potatoes of the point. We need to start connecting culture to healthcare. That'll help us better understand the science of healthcare. So I appreciate that answer and how you laid that out for me. So my next question to lead into is, what is cultural racism, and how does that tie to our healthcare, and understanding how to better take care of ourselves?
So cultural racism is how the dominant culture is founded upon and then shapes the society's norms, values, beliefs, and standards to validate and advantage white people while oppressing people of color. It's real simple. Cultural racism is how the dominant culture defines reality to validate and advantage white people while oppressing people of color. It's real simple. Cultural racism uses cultural differences to overtly and covertly assign value and normality to white people and whiteness in order to rationalize the unequal status and degrading treatment of people in communities of color.
Absolutely.
And so you can see I get excited because I'm actually heated, because it's been 20 generations that they've been giving us the false information, and they've been using the same culture and communication tactics. And here we go. We're still using white body culture to heal. And so you can't use white body culture to heal black bodies.
Absolutely. They've been teaching us how to let them save us instead of teaching us how to save ourselves.
And telling us to go to treatment. Come on now, what I need to go to treatment for? You've been giving me the treatment. All I just want is some just truthful information.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I guess that leads into one of my final question is what is white supremacy culture and
No,
how
you didn't do that.
what is that and how has that specifically affected the information flow of healthcare to black people and our communities? How has that altered the overall I'd say status of our healthcare? Because we know for a fact, oh yeah, black people are born with more susceptible to high blood pressure. Why is that?
That's from a system of oppression, man. We don't have no. If we didn't have to pick that cotton, man, and hold them fields and stuff, man, we wouldn't have high blood pressure. If we didn't have somebody, man, who's systemically oppressing us from every front that we face, and then want to tell us that we got to use their language in order to get well. Come on, what is that about? And so when you talk about what is white supremacy culture is the idea. Did you hear what I said? It's the idea. And it's the ideology that white people, when the idea starts releasing action, the white people are superior to people of color, and that idea starts releasing actions. That's what is white supremacy culture. That's exactly what we're talking about here. White supremacy culture is reproduced by all the institutions of our society. So where are you going to escape? In particular, the media, the education system, Western science, which played a major role in reinforcing the idea of race as a biological truth, with the white race as the ideal top of the hierarchy, and the Christian church have played central roles in reproducing the idea of white supremacy, that white is normal, better, smarter, holy, in contrast to black and other people in communities of color. Ask me about white body supremacy. Again, a white supremacy culture is an artificial, historically constructed culture which expresses, justifies, and binds together the United States white supremacy system. It is a glue that binds together white-controlled institutions into systems and white-controlled systems into the global white supremacy system. That's what's going on. So what we really need to do is really understand why Black lives haven't mattered.
So I guess the cold hard truth and the hard pill to swallow is racism can cause cancer. Racism can cause kidney disease. Racism can cause liver cancer. Racism can cause high blood pressure. When we're talking about, reparations, if you're not going to give us that, at least give us the information at the very bare minimum.
But what's so cold is that the ACE study came out in 1995. It was started in 1995. It ended about 1997. But they've been had this information that this epigenetics and that we've been neurobiologically altered because of all this pressure. Pressure bust pipes. And so what we see as a result of all our communities being susceptible to COVID-19 is because over 20 generations of time, they've been whittling away at us. In actuality, we've been their cash crop for all these years. We're still the same slaves that we was when we came over here in 1619. And if you can't see it, something's wrong with you, because it was just laid out in this decorum right here about white body culture.
Absolutely. And that ties right into the epigenetics, what you were talking about, how those types of incidences, our environment, our the racism, seeing a black man shot on repeat every single day, lasted across social media websites, that affects our genetic makeup over time. And we have to start understanding, there's a time and a place to turn that off and detox from all that stuff, because in the end, yes, it does make you sick. Yes, it will cause, internal issues for you that are silent, but ultimately deadly. I mean, look at me. I was relatively healthy my whole life. My friends will tell you I was never a drinker. I was never a smoker. I was in the military. I got out the military. Matter of fact, after not playing football since high school, walked onto the football team, tried out, made the team, collapsed 2 weeks later from advanced kidney disease. You know, what I didn't talk about was the trauma, that I experienced, through that journey, leading up to that point. And I'm pretty sure, that what you're talking about has a lot to do with, the genetic makeup of myself and why I'm dealing with what I'm dealing right now. So this isn't about me, telling what other people what they should do. I'm here to learn because I am what you're talking about. I do have advanced kidney disease. I do have to take anti-rejection meds every single day. But when you look at me, I relatively look healthy. That's what I want, my brothers and sisters to understand, that we are dealing with something that's much deeper than surface level. We are dealing with something that's taking us out from the inside out. And until we start learning this science, getting in front of Mr. White, getting to his website, grabbing the information from him, signing up for his programs, and really investing in our health. We know young kids look up to LeBron, and LeBron is still at the pinnacle of his game because we know the information is out that he invests $2 million a year in just his body and just his health. Why do you think he's still the best in the game today? Because he understood the science, he understood the math, and put it together and made it make sense for himself. That's all we're trying to help you do today. And really, I'm trying to help myself, selfishly in that regard. So please, everybody that's listening, please take this journey with us. I appreciate Mr. White coming here, giving us this time for the Featherweight Black Collective. I appreciate the audience, just listening, and understanding, that me and Mr. White, we're not too much different. Really, as a young person, it's my responsibility to create these avenues for our elders, and it's also on our elders to come to these avenues and not only talk but be willing to listen, like Mr. White is. And that's what I can say I appreciate about him and the League of Extraordinary People, the great organization that he's created. So with that being said, this is Dre, and this is Mr. White signing off for the Featherweight Black Collective and Health and Wellness Mondays. Thank you.
Thank you.